Welcome to episode 8 of the Movie Guide podcast. I'm Jordan and I'm here with my co-host Greg.
Hello.
Special welcome to any new listeners we might have. My website, georgemovieguide.com, got nominated for an award last weekend, and I know that that's increased my viewers and followers a lot, so if any of you are listening for the first time, I hope you enjoy. And if you randomly somehow found us on YouTube, then welcome to you too, and you stick around and see if you like what we do, which is pretty much just sit around and drink and talk about movies.
Aye. That's my pirate.
That's your pirate?
Because we're rum. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Pirates drink rum.
All right.
Awkward.
And that's Greg.
Sorry.
That's Greg for you.
Yes.
Before we actually get started here, I just wanted to say that our thoughts are with the people of France. We're actually recording this the day after the horrible terrorist attacks that took place. And, we're just a couple idiots talking about movies, but we do recognize that there are bigger problems in the world that we just wanted to mention before we got started. So we just want to say that we hope those responsible are quickly brought to justice, and our thoughts are with the victims and their families and all the people of France at this time.
Agreed.
So we'll jump right into it now. We're going to try and keep this one a little bit shorter. I know our last two podcasts have gone fairly long. Those were up near an hour and a half, which is a little longer than we'd like, so we're going to try and keep this one a little shorter.
We promise to do better.
We promise to be better. So obviously, if you clicked on the title, you know what we're talking about here, and that's the Hunger Games movies. It's a week early before the new movie comes out, but I'll be out of town next week, so we won't be able to do it then. Talk about more about that at the end of the podcast. But this is one where we really need you guys to comment for this video, because if you like the Hunger Games movies, we would like to know why. Because neither of us like these movies very much.
Nope.
So we're going to be crapping on them a lot in this podcast, but if you enjoy them, we'd love to hear your opinions on why. So just comment and let us know.
We always welcome dissent.
Yes, we do. We just like talking about movies, so I'd love to hear from other people. And
spirited defenses of movies we don't like are always interesting.
Yeah. I know I've never read the books, but to me, that's not something that should matter, because any movie based on a book, I feel like, should stand on its own, and I shouldn't have had to have read the book. So I know you've read, one or two of them?
I've read the first two.
Okay. There will be times during our discussion I'll probably ask you, did this happen this way in the book? Because
I hope I can remember it well enough to answer.
I know that it shouldn't, at least in my opinion, matter what happened in the book, but I would like to know the potential that the movies could have had.
Yes. That
they wasted on whatever the movies were trying to do, which I'm still confused about. I watched/rewatched all these movies. I had seen the first two, but I hadn't seen Mockingjay Part 1, but I watched all three this week, and it was a rough week. For sure. So I guess we'll just start with, my biggest problem, probably with the first film, but for all the films in general, is how convenient the plot gets at times. It gets really like, okay, why that's only happening because this isn't a movie and because we need it to happen for our characters.
Can you name specifics? Because I think I know what you're talking about.
Well, I know I have some things. I wrote some notes down when I was watching the movies. The first thing that I wrote down are when they are in the first Hunger Games, I don't know, tournament. I don't know what you'd call it. They're in the first Hunger Games, and the first person that dies, that Jennifer Katniss's character is near, of course, has the bow. It wouldn't be someone who had a sword or anything. So the one person that dies in front of her has the weapon of choice for our heroine. I just find that a little convenient.
I think it would have been much better if she'd just gotten it from the cornucopia herself.
Yeah, and then later on, they have to switch it, because now we have to have two winners so that our two main characters survive. That's kind of convenient.
Like, I get the point of that, though. Like, so if reading the book, again, movies should stand on their own, but in the story as it's presented to me, Katniss realizes that she has power over the Capitol, in particular the people who are running the game, because the whole point is to say if somebody can win the games, then they're set up for life. It's like this really high stakes lottery, and if we make it, people realize that you can't win. Like if we both die and someone doesn't win one year, like the system begins to crumble. So she's got them by the balls in that sense, and so she suggests to Peeta, we'll kill ourselves. And that's why then it follows that they let it go, because something needs to happen.
Yeah, well, they go back and forth with that a little too much, I think. Like, it's, all right, now we got 2 winners. Just kidding, we're going to make you kill each other now. Oh, you're going to kill yourselves, let's switch it back. And it goes back and forth too much. It's unnecessary, in my opinion. You could just left it...
I think it's rather accelerated in the movie.
There's no tension there with them deciding they're going to kill themselves, because we know that that's not going to happen. There's no tension there, because you know exactly what's going to happen. You don't know how it's going to happen necessarily, but you know that they're both going to survive somehow, because the movie's basically gone out of its way to throw that in your face.
But that's not necessarily to throw it in your face, sure. But that's not necessarily a bad plot element, because tons of movies do that. You know Luke Skywalker is going to survive at the end of every movie. You know that
I guess
James Bond is going to survive. So you always wonder, like, how are they going to do it? Which is exactly what you said.
Right, and I guess I just cared a little bit more about the characters in those particular examples more so than I did about these characters, because, to be honest, I don't care about any of them at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
you're not attached, and that's fine.
Well,
that's the movie's fault prior to that scene, is not making you feel attached.
Which is kind of my second point going in here, is that we don't care about the characters at all. I think that...
In particular, for me, Peeta, I just can't get on board.
I don't even know most of their names. Like, just in general, of course, across
that boy, that girl.
I mean, I spent the whole time calling dude Thor's brother, because I don't know his character's name or the name of the actor. I just know that it's Thor's brother. So.
I at least know his character's name, which was Gale.
Okay, yeah. See, I can't even ever remember that. So the whole time I'm just thinking Thor's brother. Oh, he's doing this, and he is actually one of my. He's one that I care about a little bit more, but he's so underdeveloped in these movies.
He's more interesting, and in particular when we watched the Mockingjay Part 1, I guess is what it's called. He has his own little story there where he goes on the rescue mission for Peeta, and you sat up in your chair. You were so much more interested.
Yeah, I was interested at that point, because the third movie, I'd say I like the second one the best. The third one had the most...
Nothing happens.
Well, it had the most interesting... Like, it took all the parts that I was more interested in, because I was more interested in the rebellion kind of aspects of the first 2 movies more so than the actual Hunger Games elements of it. So the third one focused on that, which I liked, but it just dragged on forever. So when
talk.
When you finally get to the scene where something's actually happening, I'm like, okay, this is where it's getting good. So that was much more interesting to me. But his character himself, he's introduced in the first movie briefly, but you don't really know who he is, and he's a little bit more in the second movie, which is is that the one where he gets attacked by the regime or whatever, where he's whipped.
Yeah, I just watched that half this morning.
Yeah, so that I think showed a good character element to him, was that he was willing to go through that. He was trying to protect somebody at the beginning, and he ends up getting whipped for it. And even when people try and stand up for him, he's like, "No, I can take this." So I think that's a good character element of him, which makes him one of my favorite characters, I would say.
And I was in refreshing for this podcast. I was noticing in this first half of the second movie, he spends almost all of his time on screen, at least the first half, trying to encourage the rebellion, or explaining to Katniss, it's happening. I think is what he even says at one point. And he has been waiting for this,
right,
and he's seen it ahead of time. And again, that makes him one of the more interesting characters.
Yeah. Let's talk about Katniss for a second, because I think we have a little differing opinion. I know that you don't like her necessarily as a hero that much. Well,
let's limit our discussion for the moment to the very first movie, because I liked her in the first movie. Her reaction seemed genuine and acceptable in the first movie.
Well, here's what I don't like about her is her emotions, because it doesn't seem like she ever shows in any of the movies. She has this very blank expression on her face, and I don't know.
Even when her sister's name is called,
she
loses it.
I didn't buy it though. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love that scene. I love the sacrifice that she makes, and that's one of the elements I like to her character. But in terms of the emotion she's showing, I don't really buy it. I don't know if that's Jennifer Lawrence's acting necessarily, if it's the direction it took or the writing. But I know she's a good actress. I've seen her do great things, in Silver Linings Playbook and American Hustle. I know she's a great actress. But you wouldn't know, at least in my opinion, from these movies because she seems really blank most of the time. But her character herself, I like her as a hero. She's smart and she makes that sacrifice for her sister, which is really cool. And she's beautiful and she kicks butt and she does all this. And I think she's a really good hero heroine, I guess, in that respect. It's just this lack of emotion that I think she deserves or she shows, and then they play on this kind of reluctant hero idea so much. Like, she is supposed to be this leader of this resistance.
It's the third movie.
Yeah,
she still is behaving.
She's supposed to be this great leader of this resistance, and I get that, somebody like this would be reluctant in the beginning, but you cannot drag it on for, we're up at like 7 hours worth of a movie now, over the course of all three, and we're still playing on it, like...
I think what we're really seeing in the third movie is that we're just suffering from the fact that a single book is split into two
it's brutal.
films.
I can't stand when they do that in these movies, man, because this movie, there's 25 half-hour worth of really interesting stuff in this movie. So the next movie is supposed to be, I think I read, like 2 hours and 15 minutes. I would have loved the 30 minutes of interesting stuff thrown in there and make it a almost 3 hour long movie. I would have enjoyed it so much more than split. Because, like I said, I really enjoyed the aspects that it was trying to focus on in that third movie much more than the first two movies, but it drags it out forever. Like, and the reluctant hero idea is one of those things that just, it keeps going and going, and you think it's going to change. Oh, she's kind of starting to turn. Oh, no, she's back to where she was.
Yeah, every opportunity that she has to step up and realize that she didn't ask for it, but she's it. She just doesn't care. She goes back.
I feel like both. I know that it's based on the books, and it's the book's fault for bringing this into it. And I also know that this is meant for a different demographic, I'd say. This is more young adult, teenage girls kind of based. And so you have to have the love story in there. But I hate the whole love story. I hate this love triangle that's there. I don't buy any of it. I don't understand any of it. It's way forced. And to me, spoiler alert, I don't know that we really need that in this, but at the end of part 1 of Mockingjay, whatever it's called, when the raid happens and they're trying to find PETA, I was begging that both Thor's brother and PETA would die, because
so that we could move on.
No, to me as an adult male, that's exploring a much more interesting story, as the last movie would be all about her kind of revenge, and she would finally take up this hero role because she has a reason now as
and she
a
just
revenge
go nuts
element.
on everybody.
So that's a much more interesting story to me than what they ended up doing, and both of them surviving, but PETA having this mind control thing that doesn't make any sense at all. And
yeah, perhaps it will come to fruition in the second film.
I just don't understand their relationship, because it's like you're confused in the first movie whether they're faking it or not faking it just to make it through, and then the second movie you find out that they're faking it, but then through the second movie they're not really faking it. It just goes back and forth with that a lot, and it's really...
It's sort of a very flimsy argument for them being in love. Or for them having a relationship involved. I think what it suffers from is that Katniss is not as well developed as she could be. She's not as emotionally complex.
None
as
of the
she could
characters
be.
are.
But in particular, PETA is one-dimensional.
Oh yeah.
He's just, all he's interested in is being Katniss's sort of third wheel protector.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He's a little brother minus all the interesting things about being a little brother. He's
another fine actor. I mean, he's not great. I've seen him in other stuff. He's not some amazing, gonna be the guy actor, but he's a fine actor. But like you said, he's really one note in all of these movies. Even the parts where he's meant to show emotion or be this different person, like during Mockingjay when he's...
Yeah, I did not like his portrayal in that. It was kind of uncomfortable to watch.
I didn't care while I was watching. Like, the movie's trying to get you to care, trying to make you wonder Is he actually saying these things, or is he being brainwashed? I didn't care. I was waiting for them to move on, because I don't buy that love story. And then you've also got the fact that Katniss loves Thor's brother, and that's never developed at all, except for in these 2-minute segments in each movie.
Yeah, they have to remind you that she's in love, and they shouldn't have to.
It's brutal, and like I said, I feel like if they would have just made both of them die, it would have explored it would be a much darker story, but it would have explored a much more interesting story, in my opinion.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is a problem with Katniss is she's still shocked by things in the third movie. You know, when in the second beginning of the second movie, so she's seen all this death and horror, and she thinks she's out of it, right? And when they're going on this tour to say, "Hey, we're the victors," whatever, they this guy gives her the Mockingjay sign or whatever, and they trot him out, and just as they're closing the door, as they're pulling Katniss away, you see the gun go off. I thought it was a really great scene, and she just loses it. She's freaked. She can't believe that something she did created that problem. And after that, though, when stuff keeps happening to her,
you gotta realize, you gotta know.
She should have, especially going through the games again. For heaven's sake, she should
have a grasp on what's going on.
Yeah, she should be polished by now in that regard. She should be steeling herself against these atrocities. And I realize that they're still playing on her emotions. They train the birds to sing in her parent or talk in her sibling's voice and her mom's voice and all this nonsense. And I agree that all these things are heartbreaking. But by the time you get to the third movie, and she's still flipping her lid over Peeta might be dying. I mean, no. And
I hope he does. Let's get this over with. Just kill him.
There's a bigger picture here. She didn't know there was a resistance. Suddenly there's a resistance. Not only are they doing just fine on their own, they're well armed, they're a crack force, and then they spend all this time with propaganda. You know what I mean?
Well, one thing that I do like about her character,
which is an interesting idea. I'm not saying that propaganda isn't fun, because I've seen it in other movies where you get the information war rather than the actual war, and that can be really well done. I didn't think it was done here. And again, we get nice 30 minutes at the end where the battle goes up more intense, and you're suddenly interested because they've got serious defenses and all this nonsense.
Another thing that I like about her character, while you were talking about these things that her emotional side that aren't explored enough, one thing that I liked if they would have explored a little bit more is, the end of the first movie into the second movie, and even a brief glimpse in the third movie, is it kind of shows she's got some sort of PTSD from having to take part in this first. Which is realistic. You take part in this game where you have to kill people, kill kids. You would have some sort of trauma coming out from that, I'd imagine. So, they show her having these nightmares and stuff like that, but then it all just kind of disappears, and you don't ever hear from it
They
again.
only bring it back when it's convenient.
Yeah, so I like that was a really realistic element to it, but then they don't explore it enough, and it just feels kind of forced at that point. But there are a couple characters in the movies that I do like. I know there's one you want to talk about in particular, but I'll talk about somebody else first, and that's Woody Harrelson's character. I do
love it.
He's a fun character. There is one problem I had, and that's in the first movie, I think, where he's shown as this raging alcoholic, and he's all mad at the kids for asking him advice, and he goes and storms off, and then the next scene he's talking to them and everything's fine and dandy, and it's where did this
skip the section where he gets better or whatever.
You feel like you missed something. I felt like there was a couple scenes that just were left out of the movie here. I don't know if they were left on the editing room floor maybe, or what was going on, but other than that, I really like his character. He does some cool things, he has some cool moments, he's funny, he's definitely some comic relief in the movies himself, and Woody Harrelson's always fun to watch. So.
I love Woody Harrelson. Who? You said I had somebody. Who are you talking about?
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, he is a tremendous actor.
He really is. He never phones in a performance ever.
No, and I think I don't know his story, but he just comes across as a guy who started, acting in the worst possible roles, and he almost feels like he has a classical background. I don't know if he does or not, but he treats his quote unquote craft very seriously, and it's a shame that he's now passed away. Was it an overdose? If I remember right.
I think it was
Drugs.
something like that. Yeah.
It's unfortunate that a lot of these actors and these comedians and so forth, I'm thinking of Robin Williams when I say that, have all these demons, these personal demons that drive them to be more accomplished, but also plague them the whole way. But at any rate, his role in particular, I just love him in the second movie when he meets Katniss for the first time, and they're having the discussion while they're dancing, and she's trying to put on the show, and she realizes that a lot of the insiders know she doesn't want to be there, so she kind of lets her guard down a little bit with him, and he says, "Are you having fun?" And I don't remember exactly what she says, but I don't want to be here kind of conversation. And then she makes a crack about him being the game maker, and the previous game maker basically being executed.
Yeah.
And she says, "Why do you want this job?" And he goes, "I volunteered for it, like you." She goes, "Why would you do that?" And he goes, "To make the games matter." She goes, "The games don't matter." And they have this great back and forth. And then at the last comment she goes, "So something like, what really did it?" She goes, "Well, I suppose you inspired me." And then the scene cuts to the rest of the dance. It's great. It's just great. And that scene alone lifts this movie up, because you realize that there's this, he's got something going on the side, and you're not sure about him, and he becomes way more interesting for that.
Well, here's my problem with this character. It's a great performance, and I love watching him. Every time he's on screen, I'm entertained by it. His arc, I guess, kind of confuses me a little bit, and I don't know if it's coming from a background not having read the books or whatever have you. I just don't get, because you get this reveal at the end of the second movie that he's now working with the Resistance. And you brought up the point that maybe he was working for them the whole time.
Oh, he was. Yeah, that's not a speculation on my part.
It is. That's what actually happened. Is that from? Because I didn't get that from the movie.
Well, so what he says when he says, "I volunteered to make the games mean something," he's talking about making it mean something to the people so they'll revolt.
Okay.
And so everything he does, when he goes to President Snow, when he's talking about, he wants to kill her, he postpones the killing. Right? He says, we got to make the people angry. And what he's doing is he's playing this very fine line of making sure that President Snow is doing what he suggests so that he can move pieces on the Resistance side. And he's been there a while. He's already been in the Resistant camp. He's in a position, he's like a mole in a program of any kind. He's trying to move the chess pieces around in the favor of the Resistance.
Here's my issue with that. We talked about it a little bit before we were watching one of the movies. That's fine. I like that aspect of it, and that's actually really cool and really interesting. Except
in the movie,
in the actual Hunger Games themselves, in the second movie, which is actually way more entertaining than the first movie in terms of the actual games themselves, because they're having to fight off all these extra elements and stuff, which is really cool. Is there all these things that are happening that are put into play by him into the Hunger Games that at that point he has no control of, that could have killed her at any moment.
And should have killed her, but it's only by chance that they didn't.
Which is what I'm talking about earlier when we had a discussion about the whole plot conveniences thing. I mean, they have the poisonous fog that you see kill somebody, so you know it's going to kill somebody. If she trips and falls, it's game over.
Yeah.
They've lost their hero.
And she was asleep when it happened anyway.
That's it's fine that he was working for them, but that's why I don't really buy it, and that's why it's confusing to me, is because he almost kills her like 3 different times.
Right, she only gets out by chance. So the only thing I have to say about that, which is not a good explanation, or not a satisfying explanation, but he is having to keep up appearances in the Capitol, or he's done for too.
Right.
So what here's the piece that I will say, and I'll say this, and then you can tear it apart if you like. The other tributes were in on it. She doesn't know. They know. Their goal is supposed to support her. Some of the tributes didn't join that pact, but remember, they're all angry. And Joanna and anyway, they're all designed. Beatty and the old lady. They were all designed to get her out safely and protected until the ships could come get her or whatever.
Here's the problem I have with that. I think this comes from me not understanding these movies, because we talked about it a lot when we had our zombie movies podcast. We mentioned this a few times. Is a movie has to earn these moments, has to earn these plot elements to me, for me to understand what's going on. I didn't understand why there were these alliances going on because the movie never earns that. It never really tells us why. It doesn't ever pay off. It just kind of assumes you know. I don't know if that's because it assumes that you've read the books, which it should not do.
No.
Because I haven't. And I want to be able to watch these movies stand alone without having to go spend 3 days reading books. So
that's optimistic that you would finish in 3
oh,
days.
That's if I spent 24 hours each day reading, is if I would finish in 3 days. I don't know how long the books are. But.
Well, they're not very long, but I have, for me, usually a book gives me about 2 hours before I gotta go do something else.
Well, yeah, if that. So, but that's my problem with that is, you, character's name who I don't remember, big blonde guy.
I don't remember either. Oh, it's Fennec? That one?
Yeah, that guy. So he, at the beginning, starts of the second Hunger Games of Catching Fire, when they're actually in the arena, starts helping Katniss, and you see that he's got the gold wristband that was given to Woody Harrelson's character previous to that, and so you know that he's helping her now, but you never understand why. So, again, it feels like we missed a scene where Woody was talking to him and telling him exactly.
Here, so what I can offer you there, it's interesting that I've become the defender of the movies. I didn't plan to be here, but I guess it's simply because I read the books a little bit. Here's what's going on. We as the viewer are meant to feel confused with Katniss. Katniss is confused.
That's fine. I don't mind movies that do that. It's just you never get a payoff for that. You never get it explained.
Well, the payoff is that the ship gets her, and but it's so late in the game. The movie's over at that point. We find out Peeta was left behind and all this other stuff. The payoff is when there's a couple times where in the game somebody says something. I'm afraid it's the chick that's like.
I just don't think that's developed enough.
She says it once. She sees stuff a couple times. Like in the beginning, she sees the logo, her little pin logo, spray painted on the inside of a train tunnel.
Which we'll talk about later. Yeah. I love those elements in the movie, but we'll get to that.
Well, but then there you go. She sees these little details, and she's slowly realizing, and it finally comes clear at the end of the movie, that there's been this resistance building. So there was the District 13, right, that was destroyed or whatever. Mm-hmm. They existed forever, this whole time. Meanwhile, they've been sowing dissent and anarchy or whatever
which was
into this capital.
This is so much more interesting to me, which is why I was hoping that the Mockingjay Part 1 would be more interesting, because it was finally focusing on these little things you get. Like you were talking about the Mockingjay spray painted on the...
Yeah, we're pulling back instead of looking at the image that the capital wants you to see. You
get these elements of resistance. They're really interesting. That part's really cool, and then you're thrown back into the story you don't really, or at least from my point of view, don't care about as much. So
I think that's where the series failed to pivot properly into the next phase of the movies, where we still are getting the same kind of emotions and feelings that she felt in the game when she was clueless to the larger world. Or they're still selling that in the third movie when she should be fully aware now. And you as the viewer have moved beyond the character, and now you're pulled out of it and you sit there for 2 hours wondering when the movie's over.
I just think, going back to the second movie, which I think is the turning point in the movie, or turning point in the series, is into this resistance kind of thing, with that reveal at the end where Hoffman's working for them. I think that those elements, I'm getting what you're saying, but I didn't get that watching the movie. And I don't know whether, I thought I was paying good enough attention. I don't know, maybe I wasn't, or if it's because I haven't read the books, or what it is. I just feel like it's not developed enough.
You're absolutely right. This is actually really good. I feel like the movies have, like on a scale, they're higher up in terms of explaining themselves and being good movies. Gosh, I don't mean to say they're good movies, but I guess I have a different depth of understanding than you do because you haven't. And so when you look at it, you see movie A, and I see movie A plus, and that's interesting because we're basically the two kinds of viewers: the viewers who have and the viewers who have not read the books. And I think, had I seen them that way, because I saw the first movie after I'd read the book already, so I knew that at least. But it's you make a very good point. The movie does not sell itself very well and tell its own story.
Which is
well.
really unfortunate because I see almost a great movie in Catching Fire. I see it there. It never gets there.
It simply remains the best of the three.
It barely gets to good, in my opinion. That's my favorite one of the three, particularly because, like I said,
a lot happens in it.
You get these elements that I really like about the Resistance and stuff like that, stuff that I was really interested in, but also the Hunger Games themselves, you mentioned a couple times, all these times they had to battle the elements along with it. I really liked the second edition of the Hunger Games, I guess, a lot more so than the one in the first movie. The first one to me was dry, it was boring.
Oh, the actual fight?
The actual Hunger Games themselves in the first movie, I didn't enjoy that much.
I think they're less brutal because they're introducing you to it, I think.
Well, I think that all the movies themselves are much more violent than I remember them being when I first watched them, but also just than I expect them to be. I mean,
they're kids' movies, really.
Yeah,
well, young adults. I mean, even if you're making a film for 13 to 18-year-olds,
there's some pretty, especially they're PG-13, right? Is their rating, I guess.
They wouldn't be R.
Otherwise
you don't have kids seeing it.
Oh, that's true. But there's some aspects like, wow, that's a lot of blood. That's very violent.
And in the book is even worse. If I should say so, I think there's a lot more violence in the books.
So it's not that the Hunger Games in the first movie are about the only thing, like the actual games themselves are about the only thing I enjoyed from the first movie. But I enjoyed the second one a lot better or a lot more, I guess I should say. Just because I like this battling not only the people that you're battling against, but also these elements and, the giant waves and the attacking monkeys, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but
they were fun to watch.
It was fun to watch.
That's exactly. So I think that's another critical point. Is at some point the barrier is, am I entertained or not?
Yeah,
and that's why Fast and Furious continues to be interesting because it's at the very least entertaining.
Well,
and that's these movies don't cross that. At least I shouldn't say that. There are parts of the first one I like. There's lots of the second one I like, and there's not much of the third one that I like. And the third one just didn't cross that barrier.
I would say I like the second one the best, followed by the third one with the first one. The first one I really don't like at all. The third one I like because it's focusing on these elements that I was more interested in the first two movies. And my problem with it is it just drags because it's...
So what do you want to see in the third one? Or fourth one, rather. What do you want to see in this final movie?
I want it to be these elements that I thought the third one was going to be, and I want that to be the whole movie, and I want it to be...
So you want to see the political side, you want to see...
I want to see this fight. I want to see this fight that has been dragging on.
Do you want to see it in sort of like Saving Private Ryan style, like down on the ground gritty? Do you want to see it as sort of from the command post view, where you get to see all, sort of the way the last Jurassic Park was,
I would love to see a Saving Private Ryan-esque. I know I'm not getting that. I'm not even gonna bother addressing that because there's no way that's what we're getting with this movie. Okay. I would like a kind of a mix of showing fighting on the ground with this kind of command post, because then you get really like Julianne Moore's character is the only one that's not really developed, but she's really interesting. It's like the president of the Resistance, and you got Hoffman's character, you've got the guy who's from Casino Royale who plays the other guy who's like the technical wizard or whatever.
The black guy. Beatty is his character. I was I thought you were talking about Le Chiffre.
You've got all these really interesting characters in the command post as well. So I'm giving up on development at this point. I don't think they're going to develop these characters anymore than they already are. So you're saying fine, I'll trade that for having. I'll trade that for an entertaining movie. I'll trade that for seeing them kind of command Katniss and Thor's brother on the ground with the rest of the Resistance.
Do you want to see them in? I mean, are we talking like invade the Capitol, tear down the walls, invasion?
Yeah, I want to see them take the fight to the Capitol.
Because essentially, what we've lost the you lose the intimate moments. I think a little bit there, and they've played up this PETA thing so hard. We're gonna have, I'm sure, a good 20 minutes of PETA becoming not crazy anymore, which I feel like is going to be really boring. But because that's what the Divergent movies first movie was all. It was all in this chick's head.
As bad as the Hunger Games movies are,
still better than 12.
I've seen what have I seen? I've seen at least the first Divergent. I think part of the second. I turned the second one off. I just couldn't.
No.
What is it, Insurgent or something like that? I just
I
can't.
don't remember.
Can't watch it. They're really, really bad.
They're cheap knockoffs of Hunger Games.
Really, it's like the Hunger Games without the Hunger Games. It's bad.
Just a blink of
But
a title.
yeah, we'll never do a podcast on those movies because I won't be able to watch them. I think they've even got another one coming up that would give us.
Of course, it's a
that
three.
would give us a.
They're splitting the fourth one or the last.
Of course
one
they
up
are.
with that too.
So we would have a perfect opportunity to talk about that. We won't do it.
There's plenty of other people to lampoon that one. I think what we need to see in this next movie is the President Snow is a fascinating character, and I would love to see him lose control of his government, basically, because the stuff on the ground is so terrible that the people who are supporting him, these sort of decadent, super rich, super wealthy people in the center of the country, lose the ability, or their lives are impacted. This is what I liked that they did in Mockingjay. When they had all this fighting going on, but it was so far away from the people who matter, i.e. the capital, that nothing was getting done. So they blow up a hydroelectric dam which supplies power to the capital. And all of a sudden, people pay attention because all these things, all their little niceties, all their daily routines are disrupted. So that's what I want to see. I want to see President Snow have... and then you get to have some more of those political battles where you've got alliances being formed and all this sort of thing. All these fun, Game of Thrones-esque things happening.
Right.
I'm looking forward to that.
So that makes sense.
Of course, I want to see fighting. Don't get
Right.
me wrong. I like airplanes and explosions and all this other stuff too.
I guess just what I wanted of this is
I'd rather them spend their budget on developing a good script. You know.
See, for me, I just want to be entertained by this one because they haven't developed enough of this for me to care at all at this point. I just want it to be entertaining because you're not going to be able to fit enough development to make up for the past 3 movies for me to care now. So you might as well not even bother.
Well, so I think their goal should be to create a standalone good movie.
Right.
The same way I can watch. They do enough explaining, maybe not enough, but they do a lot of explaining in the second movie. If someone hadn't seen the first,
oh yeah,
you could probably watch it without it. You're not going to understand who the other tributes are and why Rue and all these other characters are so important. But you get that they're important, and that's enough. If they do that with the last movie, then I'll be pleased.
There's another point I wanted to bring up that I thought of when watching the movies, and we talked about it a little bit. It's another thing that we mentioned a lot in previous podcasts is when you're thrown into this kind of futuristic-esque world, the movie needs to talk about what the rules of this world are and, what things can happen and what can't. And they don't do that at all in this movie or in these movies. And, I'm talking about, I'll get to the point where we talked about in a minute, but, this magic medicine they have in the first Hunger Games movie that gets sent in the random supply drops.
Perfectly targeted parachutes.
Yeah, I don't understand. That's never explained why they get these supply drops and what you have to do to get those, and then how something can be created and whatever. And then we had a really good conversation while watching one of the movies about the mockingjays and these
actual
bees
birds
that you have. How
Trapperjackers.
you were talking about how in the book it explains that these are all genetically modified things that the capital did.
Society has grown and advanced that far.
They never talked about that at all in the movies, and that's a really interesting story that I would have liked a 5-minute scene on, because I think that would have added a lot, because you were telling me about it. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Why
is that in there?
Why just not leave 5 minutes of the useless Peter romance and put that in instead, because that's a lot more interesting. So the universe, I guess, never really establishes a set of rules for itself, and even when it does, it doesn't explain why they're there.
In that way, it can easily break them and move around, which we've talked about the conveniences of things happening. So this miracle potion or whatever, all these things that she's getting in the game that just seem to instantly help her, and the whole fact that they can they control the weather of this place. That's how far advanced the society is, and I guess you're supposed to just pick up on that when you watch the film. In the book, the way that they receive these little gifts there's sort of this side betting that goes on outside the games, like at a horse race or whatever. You can show up as a rich viewer, and you have a team on the outside. This is why the rich districts always win, or the wealthier, nicer districts always win. The team that you put together on the outside is going and finding all the billionaires who are interested in you, who contribute and buy these something as valuable as that healing potion or whatever it was would be very, very expensive on the outside. And so that's why these poor districts never get it, because there's nobody there to wrangle them for them. So they benefit from Haymitch's previous win.
Okay.
And so he now has all this talent. He's not an idiot. He's just a drunk.
Yeah.
And so he sobers up enough, he goes in and then helps them by wrangling this support for them on the inside. So that while they're on the outside, so while they're in the game, they get these things. Again,
but
not explained well enough.
How many of these supply drops can they do in each Hunger Games? Do they get one? Do they get as many as they can afford on the outside? Why do they get to do them?
All valid
questions. What are the rules here? The first one comes in and you're like,
what is that? Why?
Why is this happening? Okay, she's got magic medicine now. Where did that come from? How did he get that? How did he send it through the dome? How is all this happening? Never explained, and that bothers me.
I wonder if you're asking questions that the average viewer isn't asking. And I worry about this sometimes, and this is not a pretentious thing, I promise. I wonder, am I just too smart for this? And again, that sounds so pretentious.
It might be it.
But am I analyzing it too much?
Here's my thing, is I'm not usually like that. I mean, the action genre is my favorite genre. That's a genre you usually...
ask zero questions.
You just watch and you're entertained. It's movies like this, I think, where things are so obvious that I can't help but pick up on them. Because, we've talked about a ton of things now that in previous podcasts, there's things that I pick up on either when they're really good or really bad. There's somewhere in the middle I don't care because I'm just watching the movie.
Right.
Plot holes, plot conveniences, coming from an action fan, not something I usually pick up on. Because I don't care, because I'm watching stuff blow up and I'm entertained. In these movies, they're all over the place and I just can't help but pick up on them. I think the funniest one is in the third movie. It's my least favorite part of the third one, probably. I was saying stuff the whole time. You're like, very good question, very good question. I don't know if you remember the scene I'm talking about. It's the lumberjack scene where they take on the guards. And all of a sudden, they just start running away from all these armed guards. And so they just start mowing them down. I'm like, all right, what's your plan there? What are you going to do? You outnumber them. Why not run the other direction and attack them with the axes that you have? You're still going to lose, guys. You're going to lose less than if you run in the opposite direction. Then they start climbing trees like, still, what is the plan here? What are you going for? And then they set off these explosives. And I'm like, whoa. Where did you, as the resistance, while under armed guard all the time, get these explosives and have time to plant them and coordinate this attack?
Yeah, over just a handful of guards that you're leading out into the woods.
Where did this come from?
I think they sacrificed a couple dozen people, while they're climbing the trees. Okay, hold on a second. I don't care. Are they saying, oh, we're lumberjacks, trees are our business, we scale a tree, no problem? Fine, okay, I'll buy that.
I won't. I won't even buy that.
Well, I'm just saying, we're going to go to the store on this one. Even still, just all of the problems and the conveniences of that scene, I think are, again, valid questions.
Yeah, I was watching, I was like, wait, what's going on here? First of all, we don't know any of these characters.
No.
They're this random district that we haven't been introduced to.
We're watching a montage of all the districts fighting back. Is that the same scene where we have the song, the Hanging Tree song? It's right around there. Because they lead from that into the dam, which I'll be honest, I like the song a lot. And it's kind of a weird artistic moment in the middle of this otherwise unartistic film. And I kind of liked it. I'm not going to say it was excellent.
I didn't dig it as much as you. Maybe it's just the fact that I didn't care enough at that point for it to affect me.
It's a tonal shift. Because it essentially lifts the destruction of the dam up in importance. And while I think it was very important because it, like I said, it furthers the plot, we now have impacted the Capitol and really pissed off President Snow. But anyway, nevertheless, it's a strange transition, but that whole montage of them fighting back.
I was like, what is going? We don't care about any of these characters, but all I know is they took off running, and you know you're gonna get shot for doing that. So what's your plan? Then you climb trees somehow and set off explosives that you somehow
Lucky
have.
the guy who had the trigger
didn't
didn't
get shot.
die.
Yeah, I know. Did they all have detonators just in case, or was just hoping that this
Is it
one
wireless?
guy...
In fact, because that now occurs to me. How do these guys who are chopping trees down with axes, by the way, not with professional nice equipment, how are they setting off wireless connected devices? Many questions.
But yeah,
no answers.
That was one thing that I picked out. It was in my notes for the third movie. I had to bring that up because that scene is hilarious to me. But I guess just like to kind of wrap things up here. First movie, don't like it. First movie is boring at times.
Let's do it. What's your least favorite and most favorite part of the first movie?
My least favorite, I would say, are all these plot conveniences that are just so obvious and they take me out of the movie. My favorite element is obviously the games themselves. I'd even see some of the training scenes are pretty cool. Is it in the first movie where she shoots the apple out of the...
I think that's the... No, I think it is. I think it is because they're not paying attention.
That was pretty cool. And
because in the second one, she strings up a dummy.
Yeah. I didn't get that. That was dumb in my opinion. The actual training that she does where she's shooting at I don't know what they are, like the little lights that are moving targets or whatever, that's pretty cool. That was a fun scene. But so yeah, the first one, I like the Hunger Games themselves, like some of the training, but it's the first whole half of the movie is boring and I don't care about it, except for the sacrifice scene was pretty, where she sacrificed herself for her sister. Good scene. Don't care about it quite as much as I think I should, because I don't think the movie earns it enough, but it is still a good scene, and I like that aspect of it, and I think that adds something to Katniss's character. But yeah, most of that movie is bad. The second one, you can go ahead and talk about the first one.
Yeah, so just briefly, I really liked, this is a very small scene, and it doesn't, it's maybe not as comprehensive as what you just said. I really liked it when she got to her hotel room for the first time, and she's been through all this rigmarole, she's been dressed up for the press, and she's been having to miss her family and all this stuff. Speaking
of dressed up for the press, let's talk about these fire effects in these movies for a second, because when those dresses catch on fire, it is the most obvious CGI I've ever seen in my entire life. It's bad.
Those effects are bad. Interesting fire. I think that if they just said make it look like fire, I'm sure it would look like fire. I feel like they stylized it quite a bit.
Maybe so, but
because you've seen. I mean, how many movies have you seen that have CG fire in them? I mean, tons, and you've probably never complained.
The first Expendables movie has some really terrible CG fire. Maybe even worse than this, but
yeah. But the most recent, James Bond movie probably had a bunch of CG fire in that too that you would have liked. So I don't think it's that CG fire is bad. I think it's their version.
The effects of this are terrible. Whether it's on purpose or on accident, they're terrible.
So she gets to this hotel room for the first time. She's had all this nonsense go on, and she likes being outside. She likes nature. She hunts with a bow and arrow, for heaven's sake. She sits down
because some people have guns and some people still use swords, and I don't get that. But never mind. That's just another complaint that I.
Well, the one defense I think is valid is that they've repressed the other communities so much.
Maybe. That
they have access to this weird amalgam of modern conveniences. Like they all have very nice televisions in their house, and that's so that their messages from the Capitol can be broadcast to them every day. But then on the flip side, they have no useful tools for hunting except bows and arrows. But anyway, so she sits down in her hotel room, and the whole wall turns out to be this sort of immersive reality of a screen that she can alter into these crystal clear images of different environments. And it turns out that as she's filtering through them, there are scenes from the individual districts, and you see like this beautiful Southwest, and then the beach or whatever else it is, and she gets to the woods, and she's in the middle of a city, and you have this split at the moment, like she's forced to confront the fact like that's all I wanted. Like it just envelops her for a moment. She wants to be back home, and then she's pulled right back out of it, in an instant, and she's stuck there. And I liked seeing where we started, because the movie starts with her in the woods, We see her in the woods in the beginning, and now, like, through the middle, right in the middle of the movie, we have this dappled light coming through the trees, and she's anyway. I like that comparison. The thing I liked least about the movie.
Is the rest of it?
Well, I'm trying to think of something specific. I don't like the main boy that she ends up having to contend with, the tall blonde kid.
Oh, okay, yeah.
His character, I think, was even a little more sinister in the book. He's this guy who's always got everything. He's the rich kid. He's always done everything. He's always been very good at something. And so at the end of the movie, when he's faced with actually failing, he turns and he just starts losing it. And he does. I mean, he portrays it just fine. I didn't like his character as much.
Another thing I didn't like, and this is another plot convenience, I guess, is at one point Katniss is saved by the other person from Rue's district.
Because he knows that she and Rue have had a thing.
Yeah, and then this is after Rue dies, and it's towards the end of the Hunger Games. There's only a few people left. He kills somebody to save Katniss, and then was like, he just kind of moved on.
Didn't he say something? I thought
he says something.
For
it's
Rue,
like,
I thought.
Yeah, this is like the only time or something like that. It's like, no, if you're in a game where you're fighting to the death, you know you're going to have to kill her eventually, just do it. Like,
yeah. But the whole point of the Hunger Games is that some of these people have been trained to kill, and some of these people aren't prepared.
Well, in that respect, if you want to earn that for me, then you should have had to kill him later on, not have him be killed by somebody else.
Well, so they do a really good job of making sure she doesn't have to kill anybody.
Exactly. She has to kill a couple people, but she doesn't ever have to kill anybody she's close to.
She didn't have to do it directly, did she? She only kills one directly.
She shoots an arrow at
the
somebody.
The berries were an accident.
She shoots somebody with an arrow.
Yeah, but it was to save PETA or something.
Maybe.
Anyway, they manipulate that very carefully. I say I'm just meaning the movie manipulates that carefully so that she never actually is at fault. Really.
And to me, if you really want to earn this story that you're setting up, then she should have had to make that choice about who's going to live and who's going to die, in terms of people that have helped her. The
whole movie's about that choice, really, because she gets pissed off.
But she never has to make it directly.
Well, right, and this is the thing. I think she has to come to terms with the fact that her decisions have consequences. She can't just remove herself like she wants to. Right, so in the second movie, she gets the guy gives her the signal and he dies. And then,
which going into
right, she's become this symbol that she doesn't want to be, and by delaying taking up that mantle, this reluctant hero thing, more people die.
Which, going off your point there, going into the second movie here, my favorite parts of the second movie, that scene where the guy does the three-finger salute or whatever in the whistling song is great. I love that because it's just a really cool symbol of this resistance, and they do it several times throughout the series, and I really like that aspect of it. I've gone back and said several times that my favorite parts of the movie are when they show these little bits of resistance before they take you out of it with stuff you don't care about. So that's my favorite part of the second movie. The games themselves are pretty great about the second movie. The second one's my favorite out of the three, I'd say. There's obviously, I've talked about enough about the stuff that I don't like about it, and then the third movie, I really wanted to like, but it just dragged on too much for me to say it was a good movie, just because there was only a quarter of it that was really interesting to me, and the rest of the time you're just dragging it out.
Favorite part of the second movie is the scene with Katniss and Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, the game maker, which I'm Plutarch. Plutarch is his name.
I have no idea.
I just saw it, so that's
okay.
So I liked that scene a lot. As far as the scene, I didn't like everything with PETA in it.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other fun moments. I like when that chick comes in and just starts stripping in the elevator. I thought that was
I didn't like
weird
that.
Bit of comedy.
I was like, wait, what is even happening? Like, I was, what are we doing here, guys?
In the last movie, the scene that I liked best was when she, I'm blanking on it now. I'm sorry. When the fight happens and they're all in the control room and they know that the ships are coming in to bomb them, and you kind of see their capabilities of like, there's actually people here who know about weapons and technology and radar and all this stuff. So you see a bit of that procedural speak going on. Least favorite is there's all these long conversations that they just are using to fill time. They're conversations that work well in a book.
It's very expositional
don't work in a movie
the whole time.
Yeah.
So.
She has this stupid long scene with a cat. I mean, she's flashing a flashlight to the cat and
jump scare cat.
Right, well, not the jump scare cat.
Well, I know, but that
it's when she's doing this and she's moving the flashlight around, taunting the cat.
No, I know what you're talking about.
And then a second later, she's like, she gets this look on her face like she's just realized something. And movies do this all the time, where something common gives you this, moves the plot along by giving the hero or whatever some new idea. Independence Day does it with the virus.
That's happened to me before in real life, but you have to. This is another one of those things that you have to earn in the movie.
But this is my point. It doesn't result in anything. She goes and talks to Gale and says, "I just realized that President Snow's been taunting me." Well, duh. We don't need a whole 3 minutes of that. Yeah. So those are the kind of moments that I don't like.
Well, they have to drag this movie out because they decided to split it up.
This last movie is it's got to be banging, I imagine, because it's the end. I assume they're gonna.
I hope it's good. I don't have a lot of expectations for it.
I assume that the last 30 minutes of the second movie are basically the tone of the whole entire fourth movie.
Right.
Third movie, fourth movie.
That's what I'm hoping, but like I said, if they would have just gotten rid of all these romance elements of it by killing off the two main characters.
They're too long. All of them are too long. Even the second one, which there's a lot.
Yeah, they're all 2.5, close to 2.5 hours, I think. But they're.
Well, it seems to be the new paradigm to have a 2 hour plus movie.
The third one is about 2 hours, but I mean, you're talking about one that's going to end up being 4.5 hours by the end of it because the two were split up. But I think that's all I got for the series.
What would you rate the series overall?
Out of 5?
Yeah, out of 5.
Just overall, I wouldn't get it to good. 3 is good. I wouldn't get I'd say 2.5, 2 3/4 overall. The second movie's my favorite. I'd probably get that one to good. Probably about 3 1/4 on that one.
So I would say that 3 is might be the threshold if I want to see it again. The only one that meets that for me is the second one. So so far, and perhaps the fourth one will be enough to do that. But I'd agree with you. I think it's less than 3.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to do reviews on these 3 movies some point next week.
All of them.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to do this.
They merit an individual all to themselves.
Well, sort of. I tend to on my website do.
Or are they just shorter reviews?
When there's a next movie in a franchise coming out, like I did it for Terminator, and I did it for something recently. I did it for James Bond. I did Casino Royale and Skyfall. I just do like little shorter reviews of all the movies previous. Mm-hmm. And so I'll do that at some point next week to get that up. It'd basically be the same stuff that we've talked about, but written down, and some people read that rather than watch the podcast or whatever. But
written down, yeah.
But yeah, thanks everybody for listening again to this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. We're actually taking 2 weeks off. I mentioned it briefly earlier from the podcast. I'm gonna be out of town next week and the week after, and then one of those is Thanksgiving and stuff like that. So we won't be doing one for the next 2 weeks. But then we'll be back with a topic that we still haven't determined, and then 2 separate Star Wars episodes before The Force Awakens. So we'll do one on the prequels that I'll force myself to rewatch, and then one on the original trilogy. So those will be the 2 weeks before the newest movie comes out, and then the week before that, we'll come up with a topic for that. I think Creed comes out the week before, so maybe we'll do Rocky movies or something like that. Or
I guess I'll have to. I've never watched those. I'll have to brush up.
There's something else that we could do, I'm sure. The Chris Hemsworth Moby Dick movie coming out, so we could do
In the Heart of the Sea, the story of the Essex.
We're both very excited, so we could do movie set at sea or something like that. We'll figure out a topic, and I'm sure for that movie in particular, we'll do a reaction.
Let's do shipwreck movies or ship movies. That would be fantastic.
We'll do like a reaction review video. I'm sure for that movie when that comes out. That's a few weeks out, but in the meantime, you can check out my website at jordansmovieguide.com. Lots of cool stuff on there. Follow us both on Twitter. I'm at Jordan's Guide.
I'm at Greg Crafted, GRAGCRAFTED.
If you like what we do either here or on the website itself, feel free to donate a couple bucks on Patreon. That's patreon.com/JMG. Obviously, like and subscribe and comment and all that good stuff on YouTube. And that's all I got. So thanks again for listening. I'm Jordan.
I'm Greg.
We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.